hours. You're in for a real treat. And I'm just representing my husband today. I can't be on for too long because I have my 7 kids in the background. But I'm holding down the fort while he went to New York for the day to pay a very important Shiva call. And he asked me to just mention that today's class is dedicated for the elevation of the soul of Rabbi Avram Wolfson, Avram Menachem Ben Zev, who was a very, very special friend and supporter of the JLC really since day one for over 15 years. And we have a lot of gratitude to him, a very incredible human being. And his family should be comforted among the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. Enjoy, everybody.
And okay, so I want to introduce Doron Kornbluth. First of all, I have to introduce him by saying he's a very old and very close friend of mine who we have years and years of shared experiences that go all the way back to about 23 years ago, I guess now, maybe a little bit more, when we sat on the same bench in the same yeshiva in Jerusalem. And since then, we have always stayed in touch, and it's a real pleasure to be able to bring Doron in. Doron, as you know, many of you know, is a best-selling author. He's written many, many books, and I can put a link on I will put a link on the chat so you can see all the books that he's written and that are available. I recommend every one of them. He's a renowned speaker. He's a phenomenal, inspiring licensed tour guide in Israel, and he has a lot to share with us today. So I'm going to stop talking, and I am going to hand over the microphone to Doron.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction. Hi, everybody. Can I just get maybe a show of hands? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me clearly. Thumbs up. All right. All right. Technology is amazing. That's great. So a big thank you to Rabbi Began, my old friend, for inviting me, and for the Chaim Center. I see Julie's on, so thank you for all the arrangements, and for the Data of North Dallas, right? Rabbi Abrams. Hudi, I don't know where you went. So thank you all. It's nice to be here with you. As we said, these are old friends of mine, and I feel very much family, as well as some of the people on the call, friends of mine, friends of my family in Chicago. So it's very nice to be here with you. So, you know, when I heard that introduction from Rabbi Began, I thought of a story. You might have heard of this. There's a famous British playwright, a literist named George Bernard Shaw. He was an expert in English literature, and he was once invited to speak at a social function. He responded positively, and he asked the host, well, what do you want me to talk about? And the host said, well, you're the expert in English literature, so why don't you tell us what you've learned about English literature over the years? And George Bernard Shaw responded with delight. Wonderful. How long can I speak for? And the host said, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes. So George Bernard Shaw was in shock. What? You want me to tell you what I've learned about English literature in 4 or 5 minutes? How can I possibly do that? And the host responded simply, speak slowly, George. So what we're going to talk about now is sort of my favorite subject. And if you take everything that Rabbi Began, talked about in the introduction and put it to the side, it's something that I have focused on for about 15, 20 years, which is what keeps Jewish families going. And, on the one hand, I could, speak very simply, and I'm speaking to parents and grandparents. It's surprising how big a Jewish influence grandparents can have on their grandkids. So if that's the stage of life that you're in, either stage of life, the same principles apply, and I'll give you some details about that. I could go very simple and say, be more Jewish, and your family is more likely to stay Jewish. That's true, but not so helpful. What does that mean exactly? And how does that relate to my life? And what do I do? And we could go to the opposite extreme. The opposite extreme is, go through the studies and the reports and the stats. You don't really need me for that. First of all, you can Google it. And second of all, it's just too much. Who can deal with all that kind of stuff? So what I'm going to try and do is to share a middle path. And this middle path will be to focus on what I have concluded are the 5 main principles of keeping our families Jewish. I want to emphasize that these principles are for everybody, whether you are unaffiliated, Reformed, conservative, ultra-Orthodox, whatever you are, wherever you are. There are principles that all of us can always improve on. It's not like you do it right, you don't do it right. We can all, me, you, everybody, we can all kind of find something to improve on. But before we get into the solution, meaning the principles, how do we raise kids to love being Jewish? How do we pass this on to our kids and to our grandkids? Before we do that, I want to make sure we're all on the same level playing field, so to speak. And for this, I want to tell you, Zoom is great. I don't know if you're on Zoom, 10 hours a day, or if this is your first time, but my life has radically changed since we've gotten into these difficult times of Corona, as many of us, our lives have changed. I used to spend a lot of my time traveling around the world speaking and traveling around Israel guiding families and groups. Obviously, both of those ended with Corona as of my last tour, I think, was February. And but I'm on Zoom all the time now. And what I love about Zoom is the chat in the bottom. I don't know if it's where it appears for you, but so I'm going to ask some questions. We're going to be trying to be a little interactive, you should have a function on the bottom of your screen saying chat. You just chat to everybody. You tell me. Here's my first question for you. Okay, we want to make sure we understand the situation today in America that we're dealing with. So you tell me, how many Jews are there today in the USA? Put it into the chat function. Tell me how many Jews you think there are in the USA. We can't have the mute off because then it's just too cacophonic, too much, but we can use the chat. So I see Shelley, you said 6 million. Great. Who else? Higher, lower? Wow, two people agree. Wow, everybody's agreeing on this. Is this a Jewish crowd? We all agree on something? What, a 2 million? Julie's saying, okay, good. You'll hear a range, by the way. You can even ask Jewish professionals, so to speak, the rabbis, the federation directors, and you hear quite a range of what people think the numbers are. 5 million. So far we have 2, 5, 6. Anyone else? Anybody say more? 10 million. Sue, very good. Was that just because I asked somebody if there's more, or are you going to be nice to me? Okay, great.
So I made a mistake the first time I put it in.
Okay, so it's interesting. By the way, don't feel bad if you have no idea, and don't feel bad if your answer will not be correct. First of all, as with almost everything in Chana, you said it right away. As with almost everything in Jewish life, it's a bit of a disagreement how you count. Not so simple, right? We're not going to get into that. But the general numbers, you will hear people say 3 million. You will hear people say 4.3 million. You will hear people say 8 million. You will hear people say 10 million. Google it and you'll see Jewish Data Bank or whatever, all different sources for it, Pew Study. The basic mainstream numbers are between 5.3 and 6 million Jews, depending how you count. 5.3 between 6. I'm not getting into who counts as a Jew, it's too complicated, but just the mainstream numbers are between 5.3 and 6 million Jews. You'll have some people say it's less. You'll have some people say it's more, but the vast majority of mainstream sociologists, demographers, statistics people, they all say we're dealing with something like 5.5 or 6 million Jews in the USA. I'm an optimist by nature, so I'm going to say 6 million. Okay, if you hear people say 8 to 10, wonderful. I wish, but it's not real. 6 million is a good optimistic number. Now, that's fact number one. Roughly 6 million Jews in the States today. Fact number two, looking around, the screen for those who I can see, many of us, have been around for a few years, let's put it that way. Do you remember when we were kids, how many American Jews there were 30 years ago, 40 years ago? Anybody remember? When I was growing up, there was an eerie, morbid coincidence that I remember being told. That was 6 million Jews killed in the Holocaust and 6 million American Jews. Anybody else remember this? I think I get a few people like that's what it was. right? So I'm not saying how old I am. That's a personal question. Come on. I'm 51, just kidding. Okay. So a generation or two ago, there were 6 million Jews in America. And today, there are 6 million Jews in America, roughly speaking. So here's my question for you. When you hear that fact, that the Jewish population of the USA has basically stayed the same, more or less. Let's not get into details, gone up a little bit or down a little bit, but it's basically stayed the same for about 2 generations. How do you react to that? There's 2 different reactions that I see amongst people. Some people say, well, hey, the other minority groups have tripled, quadrupled. The American population has doubled. What's happening? And other people say, what are you worried about? We're keeping fine. We're not like tripling, but like we're staying pretty steady. That's not so bad. The sky's not falling, right? 2 different ways of looking at the same numbers, right? And here's where I want to add in one point that I'm not sure why it's not talked about enough or more. I feel it changes everything. Anybody know, are maybe yourselves, maybe your friends or your family, do you know any Jews that live in the States right now that were not born in the United States? What countries? You can use the chat, it's the easiest way to do it. What countries and how many people? Israel, yes, there's about 1 billion Israelis living in the States. I'm just kidding, I'm Israeli, so I can say it. But there are 1 million, with an M, there are 1 million Israelis living permanently in the States. By the way, I'm not referring to the people after the army that they come and they sell, fake Dead Sea products in the malls. They go back usually.
Rabbi, sorry, I'm going to mute everybody. So can you unmute yourself right after I do that?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, don't take it personally, everybody. You still have the chat function, so we can speak that way. And at the end, when I'm finished my main remarks, we'll open it up for you to share. So yes, there's about 1 million Israelis. Who else has said? I've seen a few other people have said. South Africa, some people estimate 30,000 South African Jews have come. South of the border, meaning Latin American Jews, absolutely. I'm not sure in Chicago, but definitely in Texas and in California and in Florida, you hear Spanish in shuls, which you never used to hear. When I was a kid, never used to hear Spanish. The Jewish populations of certain countries, Colombia, Argentina, Mexico, have depleted, and they've moved to the States largely. Canada, that's true. There's been a number of Canadians moving. You're missing two main sources really of Jews in the last couple of generations. Israelis includes children of Israelis, absolutely. That's exactly what I'm referring to. Russia, excellent. The former Soviet Union. Depending how you count, at least 500,000 Jews from the former Soviet Union have come to the States. By the way, it might be much more that we don't really recognize. It's not clear who had the Jewish lineage or whatever, but at least 500,000 of Jews have come. There's one other country, Iranian Jews, Persian Jews, right? When the Shah fell in 1979, so Persian Jews, Iranian Jews went to 2 locations, Los Angeles and Great Neck, New York, big Persian Jewish populations, and 100,000 people, right? Not a small community. So when you add up this immigration, and we're almost finished with this part of the talk with the stats, so if you don't add it to it, don't worry about it. When you add up these numbers, 1 million Israelis, 500,000 former Soviet Union, 100,000 Iranian Jews, 25 to 30,000 South African Jews, at least 50,000 South American Jews, probably far more, a smattering of European and Canadian, whatever. It turns out that in the last generation or 2, there has been roughly 1.5 million Jewish immigrants to the USA. By the way, it's probably far more than that. I'm being very conservative in order to not get sidetracked by details. At least 1.5 million Jews have moved to the States in the last 2 generations. So we were at 6 million. We added on 1.5 minimum. We should be at 7.5. And how many are we? At best, we're at 6. In other words, in only a generation or 2, we have lost a couple million Jews. Now, where are they? Well, I wish I could tell you that they moved to Israel. I moved to Israel. I think it's a great place to move. Statistically, very few American Jews have moved to Israel. Thank God, no Holocausts, no pogroms. Well, no Holocaust, put it that way. So where are they? And this is the takeaway point. These missing 1.5 million or 2 million Jews are very nice people. They give to charity. They say hi on the street. They don't even recognize that they're Jewish. They don't even say they're Jewish. If you join a class like this once a year, if you belong to any Jewish organization, if you celebrate any Jewish holiday, if you do anything, you're counted in the 6 million. All of us are counted in the 6 million. That 6 million includes a huge range of Jewish involvement and activity. It's roughly divided into 3. Most sociologists divide it into 3. Roughly 2 million very committed, 2 million marginally, 2 million, they say they're Jewish, but they don't really do much. But they're in the 6 million. I'm not even talking about those, as weak as some of them are in terms of their identity and knowledge, right? We're saying there's another 1.5 million or 2 million that don't even admit, don't even know, don't even say they're Jewish. So here's the takeaway, ladies and gentlemen. What we do as parents, and grandparents most likely, is usually what comes natural to us. Meaning with all the books and all the classes, we kind of do what, it just feels in our comfort zone. But the world has changed radically. And I'm not just talking about the last year of COVID, although we will talk about that. But the world has changed radically. And if we keep doing for our kids and grandkids what our parents and grandparents did for us, it's not working anymore because the world has changed. To give you a very simple example of this, right? When I was in college, where did I spend most of my time? What do you think? Not in the bar, I was a good boy. In the library. Didn't you spend your time in the libraries? Libraries were that was the normal place to go when I was in college. Libraries today are empty. I don't just mean COVID. I used to, before Corona hit, I used to speak on 20 or 25 college campuses a year, mostly in North America, occasionally Europe, South Africa, Australia, whatever. And college libraries, university libraries are not used in any way like they used to be used. They're mostly empty buildings today. Why? Well, there's no physical books anymore for most classes. It's all online anyway. Why would you go to a library where you can't eat, you can't speak, people sit in their dorm rooms? The word Google did not exist when you and I were in college, meaning the world has changed. And if we keep doing for our kids and our grandkids what our parents did for us, it's not going to work, and it's not working. So that's the reality check. We have to be better Jewish grandparents and and grandparents and parents than our parents and grandparents were, because the world is different. Let's be honest. If my grandfather, born in Russia, right, if he thought about leaving Jewish identity, how many options did he have? Well, really, there was one. Cross the street, knock on the door of the Russian Orthodox Church, and convert. How many people were going to do that? Right? It was hard to, in certain periods of history, it was hard to leave Judaism. Today, kids have more options on their iPhones, their smartphones, in 5 minutes than my grandfather had his entire life combined. So we have to up our game. We have to be better. And that's what I'm going to share with you now. 5 principles of how we raise kids and grandkids to love being Jewish. This applies to every family in some way And I think every family, including myself, we can all find some way to improve. A Hasidic rabbi once said, if you think you're finished, meaning we all have improvements, things we can do to improve. And that's what we're going to try and talk about. Okay, the first one, principle number one. The whole world can't stop talking about the recent elections in the United States. I do not want to get sidetracked. Let's not get political. If you're positive, you're negative. I'm not getting into it. When I think of an American president, I'm a Canadian originally, right? I grew up in Montreal, but we're very attuned to what happens in the States. So when I think of American presidents, I immediately think of Ronald Reagan, because when I was a teenager, that's who was president. And that's what kind of formed my, identity, the role model, whatever. And I remember Ronald Reagan's re-election campaign in 1984. Show airs 60 Minutes. I don't know if anybody's watched 60 Minutes. I assume most of you have seen it at some point. Is it still on the air? I assume it's still on the air, Sunday nights, 7 o'clock Eastern time. I don't know when it is on Chicago time or Dallas time, Central time. So, it used to be very simple, structure. They would get on the little stopwatch clock, whatever, announce the three, four main topics. Then it'd be the guy that would talk about like funny things happen in the postal office, at the end. And it was like so it airs on Sunday night. I remember an episode from the middle of Reagan's re-election campaign in 1984. Leslie Stahl, first female host of 60 Minutes, gets on the air, does a long report, 8-10 minutes, primetime television, and something funny happens after the report. The report went like this. She showed Reagan with Chinese Americans and Hispanic Americans and Black Americans. But the audio, the text, was actually her saying, actually, he got the lowest minority vote in recent times. I think he's racist. Then the video switched, and the video went to, Reagan's in Detroit, churning out cars, and McDonald's flipping hamburgers. All the images were taken from his election campaign, from his commercials. But the audio was her saying, actually, the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. It's 8 to 10 minutes, whatever it was, of a complete hatchet job on Reagan, saying how, the ads aren't true. So I don't know about you, but like when you have somebody, mad at you and you know they're going to call, you kind of expect, you're going to hold the receiver far away from your ear, right? So she's expecting the call on Monday morning from the White House, yelling at her, you're not a journalist, you're a Democrat, that was unfair, you can do that to anybody, we're going to get you, you're never going to set foot in the White House again. The secretary puts through the phone call from the White House. Monday morning, CBS Studios. And the White House press secretary, I think it was Martin Fitzwater at the time, I'm not sure, you can tell me, gets on the phone and says, hi, we're just calling to thank you for the report last night. What? The 60 Minutes report. We're calling to thank you for it. Did you see it? Of course we saw it. What are you thanking me for? I destroyed you. And then he laughed and he said the following, and it stuck with me for how many years is that? 30 years, whatever it is, 36 years. And Leslie Stahl was so shocked by his admission, by what he shared, that she got on the air the next Sunday to tell the story of what happened, which is how I know what happened on the Monday. So he says, Leslie, we're surprised. You're one of the top journalists in America today. You're on television all the time, and you don't understand your own medium. It's television. People watch television. They're viewers. You gave us $50 million worth of primetime television, primetime images. No one was listening to a word you had to say. Thank you. The White House is at your service. So she was so shocked by the story, she got on the next day to tell it, and stuck with me for all these years, because it shares an unbelievable reality. We think that ideas count, that words matter. We're sharing a class now. We read books, and it's true and it's important, right? But at the end of the day, you know what's even more important? Visuals. Think about it. Why is it that no matter what you're going to purchase, whether it's parts for a car, or whether it's a radio, whatever it is, there's a picture of a beautiful woman on the ad. You ever think about that? Why? Well, the advertising companies have done billions of dollars of research, and they know that somewhere in the back of our minds, a guy wants to be with a girl like that and a girl wants to look like that. It plugs into something visually. Visuals are so powerful. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, you can talk to your kids and your grandkids until you're blue in the face, as my mom likes to say. Be Jewish, be Jewish, be Jewish, be Jewish. Holocaust, be Jewish, Israel, be Jewish, be Jewish, be Jewish. It's just words. 90% of them go in one ear and out the other ear. And what's really going to affect the next generation is not what we say, it's what we do, and it's what they see. In other words, to be very honest, I'm amongst old friends over here. If I could pay the local rabbi to handle my kids' Jewish identities, I write a check, they guarantee my kids are going to stay strongly Jewish, I would do it in a second. Oh yeah, Doron, and I fancy myself a Jewish educator, and I write and I read and I teach. You don't have enough responsibilities in life? Try to be a good husband, a good father, and make a living, to have some impact on the world. But the point is, you can't hand off your responsibility, because we're the role models for our kids. We are the prime images for our kids and our grandkids on what it means to be Jewish. And the rabbis and the teachers can all help, but they're not the prime role models. We are. By the way, the last year has proven how true this is, and it's made it even doubly true, because the institutional Judaism that we rely on around us, the going to synagogue, the Jewish schools, is suddenly not so reliable, right? Much harder. We've lost a lot of that community support, and it all comes down to us. Now, if this first point, this first principle, the Ronald Reagan principle, as I call it, right? And don't get sidetracked if you liked him, you didn't like him, that's not the point. The point is that visuals count. If this is scaring you, don't be scared. You do not have to make any radical changes in who you are. You do not have to become someone you're not. You don't have to, we're not talking. All we have to do is to show off our Jewish lives. We're here together on a Sunday morning. You obviously care and you're living, you have a strong part of your life is Jewish. It's clear, right? So just show off what you're doing, right? Let them see you living Jewish. Let them see you reading Jewish books. Let them see you doing Friday night dinner, whatever it's going to be. Every Jewish family, every Jew should try and upgrade a little bit every year. Find one thing that you're not doing Jewishly or you're not doing well, and try and do it. That's what life is about. We're trying to get better and better and stronger and stronger. If you're doing the same thing Jewishly in the same way for the last 20 years, you probably enjoy doing something. You pick the way. Nobody can tell you what to do. We're all on each individual, our private journeys, right? But it's a journey. So for instance, maybe you don't do Friday night dinner. So you can start doing Friday night dinner, right? I meet so many Jewish families that they have a family dinner with the parents, the grandparents, whatever, on Sunday night. I don't know if you know anybody who does Sunday night dinners. I met a lot of Jewish families that do it. I only have one question. Why? We have this great thing in our tradition, Friday night dinner. You put a white tablecloth, you don't answer the phone, you just give attention to your kids and your grandkids. By the way, this is even true for teenagers. Ladies and gentlemen, I have 5 teenagers. Come on, guys, give me some love. I mean, come on, this is not easy. 5 teenagers. I also have one in his 20s, okay, but he's like the easy one. So they even want the attention from their parents. They won't admit it, but they do, right? So the point is, maybe Friday night dinner is what you want to do. Maybe it's having kosher meat. Maybe it's going to a class. I don't know. You choose what's right for you. Nobody can tell you what this, that. But each of us can improve. Now, people are sometimes nervous about this because they feel, oh my gosh, but what do I know? What do I do? I'm the role model. I can't be a role model. I'm like a hypocrite. And I've even heard people say, well, it doesn't make sense. I'm going to do a Friday night dinner, but I'm not going to do Saturday. I respect Shabbat, but either you do Shabbat or you don't do Shabbat. It's hypocritical to do part of it. Or listen, I'm You know, I'm a big fan. I respect a lot, you know, keeping kosher. I see the mystical aspects and the discipline of it and the community building. I hear it. I get the idea. But, you know, I'm with my community, with my spouse, with my family, my neighborhood, you know, I'm just not going to, I'm not going to be able to keep kosher out of the house. And it's inconsistent. It's hypocritical to keep kosher inside and not keep kosher outside. So I want to give you a very simple explanation of how to understand that. So if someone says to you, if a kid says to you, well, why are we keeping kosher in and not out? Or why are you doing Friday night and not Saturday? The answer is, listen, forget that Saturday exists right now, okay? Friday night dinner is a beautiful thing of its own value. Forget that, you know, the outside exists. Keeping kosher, no, I'm not pushing either of these two things. You can choose whatever you want to do. We all have to find our own way. The point is, Judaism is not a list of do's and don'ts. It is a path. You know how like the Buddhists have a path, right? Well, Lahavdil, like we have one. It's called halakha. Have you heard that word, halakha? Halakha is often translated as Jewish law. The only thing is, that's not what the real translation is. Any Israelis in the crowd? I know there are a couple, right? I saw Chana, I was thinking of you, right? The word holech, ani holech, ani holechet. What does it mean? I go, I walk. The word halakha literally means the path, the way you go. That's what it means. So we all take little steps along the way. You got 120 years, hopefully, right? You don't have to be perfect. You don't even have to be perfectly consistent. And when someone says, like, well, why are you doing this and not doing that? The answer is because I'm human. And what I'm doing, this is good. And maybe in the future I'll do that. I don't know. Ask me in 5 years or 10 years or never. I have no idea, right? That's the first principle of keeping our kids and our grandkids strongly Jewish. Being aware of the visuals. Let them see us leading Jewish lives. Don't hide it. Don't do it privately. When you are, writing a check to support an important local Jewish organization, the L'Chaim Center in Deerfield, he didn't ask me to say that, or in Dallas, right, the Abrams. Don't do it from your office. Do it from your dining room table, where your kids or grandkids say, "What are you doing?" You say, "I want to support Jewish life," and that you're showing. That's visuals instead of just words. Okay. Second principle, that first principle is visuals. We're the role models. Don't have to make radical changes. Don't have to become somebody you're not. Just have to show off your Jewish life. Let them see it. Next, we're going to test your Jewish knowledge over here. Use the chat function. Perhaps the most famous story, or one of the most famous stories from the Bible, from the Torah. Joseph of the Technicolor Dreamcoat gets sold down into slavery in Egypt. He rises up to be viceroy, essentially the prime minister of Egypt. And there's an amazing dramatic confrontation, one of the great dramatic confrontations of history, where his brothers come down to get food. And he recognizes them, but they don't recognize him. He's speaking Egyptian and dressed Egyptian. And at one point, he asks for his youngest brother, Benjamin, to join them, to come down to Egypt. And the brothers object. The brothers say, sorry, Benjamin cannot come down to Egypt. And they give an excuse. They explain why Benjamin cannot come down to Egypt. Does anybody remember why? What reason do they give? Put it into the chat function. Let's see if anybody knows. What reason do they give? Why is it that Benjamin cannot join in Egypt, according to the brothers? Anybody know? Excellent. Shelley, you got it. Right? Hard on their father. They explain that their father already lost one child. They don't realize they're talking to that lost child, right? That's him. That's Joseph, the lost child. And he can't bear to lose another one. That's a famous answer that they give. And it's a beautiful explanation. Okay. Now, anybody know how old Benjamin was at this moment? They're arguing over Benjamin, whether he can come down, right? He's the youngest, whether he can come down. And the brothers say he can't come down. He's got an old father. Anybody know how old Benjamin was at this moment? Well, it sounds from the story that, he was 12 years old, 14 years old, 15 years old. And it turns out that not at all. We always wonder, like, how can you read the same Torah portion every year for a kid into your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s? Like, what? Because there's infinite depth there, right? You look at it differently when you're an adult than when you're a kid. It's endless. It's beautiful. And you find out more and you look at it in a whole new way. Turns out when you add up the ages of how old people were at any given time, at this moment of this dramatic confrontation, little Benjamin was 37 years old. Doesn't it change the whole story? We always think of being like a little kid. Suddenly, he's not a little kid. At this moment, get this, he was already married and he had 10 kids at this moment. Changes the whole story. It's unbelievable. Any lawyers here on the call? No law. Is this a Jewish crowd, Rabbi? There's no lawyers? What's going on? So, okay, we've all seen enough Judge Judy and stuff like that. Imagine you're a lawyer, you're a litigator.
There are lawyers, by the way, they just don't want to admit it, but there are a few. I can tell.
Very good. So imagine that you're a lawyer, or if you are a lawyer, you're a litigator, and you are arguing for mercy. The court is thinking of sending Benjamin away from his family. Which excuse would you give? Would you say, please, Your Honor, he has an old father who loves him? Or would you say, please, Your Honor, he's got a wife and 10 kids? No brainer, right? You mentioned the 10 kids. So the Kotzker Rebbe, famous Hasidic master, roughly 200 years ago, pointed out this problem. The brothers were smart people, wiser than anybody we've ever met. They were prophets, they were sages. Why did they mention the old father and not mention his 10 kids when they're arguing for mercy? And listen to what the Kotzker Rebbe said 200 years ago. When I first heard this, I want to tell you, I was actually a little bit shocked and even offended a little bit. I found that I agreed with him, but you tell me what you think. Kotzker Rebbe said, the reason why the brothers mentioned the old father instead of mentioning the kids, Benjamin's old father would miss him rather than his kids, is that although his kids would certainly need him a lot, and even more than the father in a way, but in a strange way, Benjamin's father would miss him even more than Benjamin's kids would. Because get this, parents love their children more than children love their parents. I'm sure there's exceptions to that rule, but it's probably just a small number of exceptions. Think about it for a second. Of course, our kids love us, and of course, we love our parents, but it's rarely the same as how much a parent loves their kid. For a woman, from the time she's expecting, certainly birth itself, when the kids are little, the constant giving, when you give to something, you come to care about it. The physical giving of the young years, of the first years. Finally, they're in their teens, and physically, there's no more direct physical giving, but it's the emotional giving of the teens. They graduate university, and they're still asking for money, and we give, and we give, and we give. And what happens when you give? Boy, do you come to care. Part of our love for our kids is just programmed, but part of it is based on just giving and giving and giving. And kids are usually on the receiving end. So this is why, according to Kotzker Rebbe, the brothers mentioned Benjamin's father, because he loved him so much. He invested in him so much. The point is like this: whatever you invest in, you come to care about. This is a very simple idea, by the way, but we don't think about it. I don't think about it so obviously, right? I'll just give you an example. Raise your hand if you've ever been whale watching. Anybody been whale watching? Okay, good. I see a few people. That's great. Rabbi Began, it's probably not so easy to organize a tour from Chicago, right? I don't think there's any on the like Michigan doesn't have the blue whales or anything. So I've been whale watching a bunch of times off the west coast of Canada, and I've been in South Africa a number of times, and there's places you can stand on the beach and watch the whales. By the way, once in your life, go whale watching. Just incredible. Like if you've been to safaris, you've been to zoos, it's like to see these massive creatures in their normal habitat. It's wonderful, right? So I love the whales. I really do. I like them. Okay. And I might even send a check to Greenpeace or something to protect them, But if you were to ask me on my list of top 10 things in my life, save the whales is not there. I mean, for me, it's, I don't know, my family, my community, humanity. I mean, like, you have to go down quite a few things to get to save the whales, right? For my personal list of important things. Now, what were to happen if I was to spend the next 12 months volunteering for Save the Whales? I was sending out, tweets and, Instagram, and I was riding on the Greenpeace boats, chained myself to the link fence outside of government installations. Boy, would I care about those whales. Because whatever you put into, you come to care about. Because of what I do, I get questions pretty regularly from parents, grandparents around the country. And I've noticed a theme in a lot of the questions. Typical example, Doron, I don't understand, what happened. This kid was so Jewish, we have a Jewish home, we did Friday night dinner, he went to a school that was half Jewish. Then he goes off to college and like nothing, doesn't have any Jewish friends, not dating a Jewish girl, won't go to the Hillel, doesn't go to the Chabad. Like what happened? They were so Jewish and suddenly they go to college and everything's lost. Well, every story is individual and every case is different and there's no absolutes. But I'll tell you what normally the explanation is. Normally the explanation is the parents misread the situation completely. It was your home, your food, your holidays. The kid was a passive observer. You did everything Jewish. When he finally went out on his own, the truth came out. Meaning the parents think he was so Jewish, and then what happened? And the answer is nothing happened. The externals changed. The goal of parenting for 8 billion people on the planet, right? The goal of being a parent is not when the kids are 4 years old and in that cute little one-piece pajama thing, okay? That's a cute time, not an easy time, but a cute time. The goal of parenting for any human being is when the kid is 25 years old, that they're gonna be a responsible member of society, a caring, good person. We have that goal as well for our kids. We have an additional goal, that they'll stay Jewish, that they'll want to be Jewish. And it depends on their feelings, not our feelings. The way to get their feelings is to get them active. First principle, Ronald Reagan, we have to be role models. Show off your Jewish lives. Second principle, get the kids and the grandkids active. This is why there's Jewish summer camp and youth activities and holidays. By the way, COVID has made some of this much harder, right? But on the other hand, some of it is actually, they're home with us. So hopefully you took advantage of this over Hanukkah. If not, you got Purim coming up, you got Passover. This doesn't mean you have free slave labor for Pesach cleaning, no. But it does mean that everybody should do something to get ready, prepare a little skit, read part of the Haggadah out loud, share something. Like the more active they are, the better. You have to find what works for your kid. It's got to be something that's active, but also something that's positive, right? Every kid is different. But the principle is, if they're not doing Jewish, they will not feel Jewish. It's just not the way that it works. First principle, we have to do Jewish. Do it, not just say it, and show it off. We're the role models. Second principle, they have to do Jewish because that's how their feelings will develop. Number 3. This one is very, very quick. Every study that I have seen shows a direct relationship between Jewish knowledge and Jewish identity. Meaning the more people know about being Jewish, the more people know about Judaism, the more likely they are to care and to stay Jewish. Now, if this seems obvious to you, it's because it seems reasonable, right? Truth is, though, it wasn't always true. This is what's kind of funny. We have this nostalgic view of Europe, right? Nostalgic view of Europe. I assume most people on the phone are European ancestors. I assume it's true in the Middle East for Middle Eastern Jews as well, but Europe is the community that I know the best. And we think that going back 100 years, 200 years, everybody in Europe was knowledgeable and religious and pious. Oh, come on, right? Not at all. They're all types of Jews. But the point was, like, people stayed who they were, right? Jews stayed Jewish, Catholics stayed, for the most part, Catholics stayed Catholic, Protestants stayed Protestant, right? There were groups. And even if you didn't know so much, you stayed who you were, for the most part. Today, you got to know more. Give you a simple example. Right? I meet so many Jews that they are so well educated. They can speak a couple languages. They have MBAs or PhDs. They're successful in business. And their knowledge of Judaism is that of a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old. Because the last time they had any serious Jewish learning was for their bar bat mitzvah. No wonder we don't look so impressive. And no wonder they're not staying so Jewish. Jewish education is more important today than ever because they are so knowledgeable. The young generations are so knowledgeable, so open to the world. They know when they're exposed to so much, they have to know even more than we knew. Isn't that kind of interesting, by the way? Our kids and our grandkids have to have better Jewish educations, have to know more than we did. Now, some people are threatened by this. It's going to be awkward if my kid, my grandkid, if they know more about being Jewish than I do, right? So I want to share with you a personal answer to this problem, a solution, because I've dealt with this. I'm born in Canada, and my kids are all born and raised in Israel, and I face this in a couple different ways. I speak Hebrew. I mean, I've been there for 25 years, but it's not my native tongue. It's my third language, actually, because I speak English and French from Canada, and then and then Hebrew. And the truth is that all of my day-to-day life really is in English. My wife is American. I'm Canadian. I speak English with my kids. I travel around the world in English. I write in English. So my kids' Hebrew is far better than mine, right? So every once in a while, my kid will say to me, Abba, Dad, you don't know that word? I'm 8, I know that word. Or sometimes it'll happen even in Jewish subjects. Abba, you're like a rabbi, like an educator, you don't know that. I mean, my kids are getting a much better Jewish education than I had growing up. I mean, what they know at their ages, so sometimes they'll know things that I haven't been exposed to. Right? And it used to bother me. And then I found the following solution, right? Feel free to steal this. You think I sent you to this school so your Hebrew would be the same as my Hebrew? You think I sent you to this school so your knowledge of Judaism would be the same as my knowledge of Judaism? You better know 10 times more than me, kid. That's why we're doing this. Shuts them up every time. The point is, first principle, we have to show off our Jewish lives, be role models, step into the role. You don't have to make radical changes, just show off that you care. Second principle, get them active so their feelings develop. What you do is what you come to feel about. Third principle, Jewish knowledge. They have to have stronger Jewish educations than we ever had because they're dealing with a different world and they are far more knowledgeable, exposed to everything else, and we have to up our game. Ideally, this means a Jewish school, a Jewish day school, straight through high school. The stats are unbelievable in the results. Not perfect. You can have a kid that goes to Jewish high school and decides to move to India and become a Buddhist monk. It's rare, very, very rare. We're talking 97, 98% strong affiliation rates. They're massively successful, right? In the cases where that's not possible, either there isn't one in your town, or some people can't afford it, or your spouse objects to it, whatever it's going to be, hire tutors, talk to the rabbis, they'll find you tutors. In my experience, and I'm on a mission to bring this back, having a private tutor twice a week for half an hour, 45 minutes is a huge thing. Even if the kid's in public school, you can have a huge effect. It's not as good as a Jewish day school where they're surrounded, but it is a close second. So, and by the way, it has to keep going after bar bat mitzvah. Someone once said that that stopping Jewish education at bar bat mitzvah is like teaching a child to read and then taking away all their books. Meaning this was all preparation anyways, right? So it has to keep on going. If you're learning something Jewish, like we're all doing here together, then you can get your kids and your grandkids. This is part of who we are. Fourth principle. And this one is much harder in our present Corona situation than it ever was before, in my lifetime at least, and that's community. Everyone wants to be part of a group, of a community. If our kids, our grandkids are the only Jew in their class, are the only Jew that they know, good luck. Occasionally it works out and they become really strong, but most time they don't want to be the one that's different. We have to raise our children that we're part of a community. This is who I am. So when you travel Jewishly. At home, right? You are involved in the local Jewish community. You go to shul on Friday nights or on Saturday or whenever, and you say, well, I don't even know if I believe in God. Oh, okay, so forgive me, Rabbi, turn off your sound for a second. Forget about God for the minute, okay? You're going for the community as well. So the point is, when you travel Jewishly. You're involved in the local Jewish community at home, Deerfield, Dallas, right? When you travel around America, you go to Jewish sites, right? There are all over the place. You go to the kosher restaurant when you visit LA. Wait a minute, I don't even eat kosher at home. That's not the point. The point is emphasizing community. This is my people. Obviously, Israel plays a big part in this. Now, you can't come to Israel right now. Full disclosure, mentioned before, I'm a tour guide. I'd love to take you around Israel, talk to the Lawrences. I see them both here. We got to know each other very well. We had a great time. But I don't know when it's going to open up again. We're hoping for this coming summer. Who knows? But when it does open up again, you bring your kids and your grandkids on a strong Jew. Don't rely on birthright. Birthright's good, but without a background and without a rabbi, without a community, and without the desire on the part of the kid, birthright's irrelevant. Really, the stats are amazing. For some kids, birthright is life-changing. For other kids, birthright is nothing, right? It just goes back to where they were coming from, just a free trip and can't even fill the buses. So the point is that make Israel a priority. Visit Israel, support Israel, talk about Israel. This is all part of community, that we're part of something. That's 4 principles so far. One more, we're almost done, and then we're gonna open it up to questions and comments. We started out with the role modeling. We are the role models for our kids and our grandkids, especially in COVID times when we don't have the institutional help. So what we do at home is a much bigger impact, a much bigger impression, right? Role models don't have to be perfect, don't have to make radical changes, just have to show off our Jewish lives. Do Jewish, don't just talk Jewish. Number 2, get them to do Jewish, because that way their feelings develop. Number 3, Jewish education. They have to know more than we ever knew, and it has to continue after bar bat mitzvah. Number 4, community, being involved in the local community. It's harder now, and it shows it's even more important now. Last point, you ever see this image that I've seen in so many Jewish homes, whether the home is unaffiliated, Reform, conservative, whatever it is, somewhere there's an image of like Hasidic men dancing. In this image, like a very positive Simchas Torah with carrying, it's like all over the place, right? Have you ever been in a Hasidic home and seen a picture of like Reform Jews dancing? Probably not, right? The point is that like we recognize they have something, this simcha, this joy. If Judaism is a list of do's and don'ts, forgive me, okay? I take families, I'm a guide in Poland and Eastern Europe as well. I take communities and families to the sites. I'm big into Holocaust education, okay? I'm not putting it down at all. But if Judaism is a bunch of talk about anti-Semitism and the Holocaust, no wonder young people are going to walk away from it. Notice how God gave one day of Yom Kippur, serious holiday, holiest day of the year, right? And 5 days after Yom Kippur, what's the holiday? Sukkot, Sukkos. Stats show the vast majority of Jews keep Yom Kippur in some way, and few Jews even know what Sukkos is. God gave 1 day serious, a week of celebration. Look what American or Western Judaism has done. We focus on the serious stuff, and the fun stuff we kind of ignore. So no wonder they're walking away from it. 5th principle, the juice behind everything, it's got to be positive. It's got to be joyous and positive. And this is a wonderful thing. This is not an obligation. I mean, it is an obligation, but this is a privilege, and this adds to my life. And if your attitude is positive, then that runs over. Let's summarize. We started out with the idea that, Jewish life is challenging. We're losing a lot of good people. And the reason is that modern world, there's a lot of competition. There's just so many options out there. It's so easy. I mean, you can sit and watch YouTube videos all day, and so we have to up our game. I gave 5 ideas. I believe these are well documented in the research and my experience as well. These are the 5 principles that all of us, we can find one thing to improve. It's worth our hour together today. Us as role models, get the kids active so their feelings develop. Education has to be stronger than it ever was and has to continue past bar mitzvah. Number 4, community, being involved locally, Deerfield, Dallas, nationally, internationally, connection to Israel. And the whole attitude has to be a positive one. Simcha has to be a positive connection. So no guarantees. You could do everything right and it doesn't work. But you know what? Results are not our responsibility. Just our efforts are our responsibility. And I believe sincerely that if we take these 5 principles sincerely as parents and grandparents, we can up the chances that my kid will stay Jewish, my grandkid will stay Jewish. Instead of it being a 50% chance, it can be a 90% chance or a 95% chance, right? They have free will, they'll make their own decisions. I don't know about you, but there's only so many things I can do in life, right? Only so many hats I can wear, and roles I can fill. Like, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I try and teach. Like, how many things can you do? So if keeping your family Jewish is one of 20 things you want to do, well, you want to learn a new language and get a new car and travel the world and blah, blah, blah. Oh yeah, I want to keep my family Jewish. I hope it works. I sincerely hope that it works, but it's a lot of stuff going on. This should be, and this can be, one of the most important things in your life. I want my family to be healthy, right? I want there to be some financial security. I want the family to stay Jewish. If this is one of the top 3 or 4 things in your life, you can make it happen. Whether you're a parent, a grandparent, whether you are far away, whether you are close, we can have a huge effect on our kids and our grandkids. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening. It's been a real pleasure. Rabbi, maybe we'll open up the mute or let people open up their own mutes or something if people have questions. I don't know how you want to handle it.
Sure. I think the best way is just unmute yourself and jump in and just introduce yourself and tell Rabbi Kornbluth who you are, where you live, and ask your question.
Thank you so much, Doron. And I have to tell you real quick, I just had Instagram deliver my groceries, and she knocked, and I opened the door a little bit because I have a mezuzah, and she says, oh, something about being Jewish, and she's Jewish from St. Louis, grew up Orthodox. So speaking of, so the mezuzah is what did it. Okay,
Nice.
Please have a mezuzah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Anyone else? Any questions, comments, anything you want to add?
How do you bring God into the picture with your children and your grandchildren?
Great question. I actually have a chapter on this. I wrote a book on this subject a number of years ago called Raising Kids to Love Being Jewish. You can find it online on Amazon, Raising Kids to Love Being Jewish, if you're interested. Rabbi, you probably have a copy or something you can lend to people if they can't find it. So the idea, I think, is like this. Everybody has their own relationship with God, or lack of relationship, or whatever you want to call it. I believe that with young people today, the entry point, with many young people, I'm not going to say everybody, is mystery. What do I mean by that? That if people think consciously that everything is rational, we can understand everything, we can explain everything, science can explain everything, then there's no room for God, right? But I don't know if you realized how I introduced those questions. An honest person knows that we can't explain everything, and I'm big into science. I have family that's scientists. I'm it's I think a wonderful addition to our lives. But even scientists can't explain everything, and when we start talking about the fact that there are things we just don't understand, there's mystery, try and explain love on a rational basis, right? Try and explain the idea that, like, we mentioned parenting before, you have a child and within 5 minutes, you'd be willing to kill or die for this child. Rationally, really, right? How about the Jewish people, right? And I have a book on this called Why Be Jewish, which you can also probably get from Rabbi Vegan, or you can find it online, Why Be Jewish. Like, you know, if you had asked anybody in history, and they did, what nation is the least likely to survive, right? Exiled, persecuted, without power. I mean, like, and suddenly we're the oldest nation, the oldest religion on planet Earth. By the way, if you look on Wikipedia, they'll say that Hinduism is the oldest religion on the planet. I have to laugh at it. I have a background in comparative religion, actually. So if you've studied Hinduism at all, we've done the syncretism of like Eastern religions. What they did was that when they were invaded by a religion, they adopted the gods and the influences of other religions, and they changed their religion, right? Hinduism today is very different than Hinduism 4,000 years ago. Very, very different, right? We're the oldest people on the planet, the same identity, the same religion, the same holidays. It's unbelievable that we're still here. So I think, Shelley, that is the beginning of the answer to your question. The beginning is that if someone can appreciate the mystery of life, if you can, you know, look at a flower and say, wow, like, what you really think that like that the survival of the fittest needs all these different flowers, really? Like, the world couldn't have survived. When you see the beauty of the world and the amazing things in history, and you suddenly open up your heart and open up your mind, and that's where God comes in. I found personally with young people that is the most effective entryway to the idea of God, is the idea that there's something beyond our reason, beyond our rationality. But again, every kid is different. Every person is different. You might find some good things that you like in that Why Be Jewish that I mentioned to you before. There's a lot on that subject. Any other questions?
I just want to say I put in the chat the Amazon link, so all the books are easily available there, and they're really all worth reading, and they're very easy to read. They're not long, and they're very to the point. So
yeah, I'm ADD. I have a short attention span, so they're not very long.
Yeah, exactly.
Any other questions, comments?
I have a question, though. This is the question I think everybody really wants to ask, but nobody has the guts to ask you. What was it like filming Fauda for the first 3 seasons? Okay, no one got that. All right, next question.
If you haven't seen it, you'll see it on Netflix, whatever it is. Very good. Any other questions, comments?
I saw parts of it. You need to explain the joke.
The main guy was Doron. He was Doron.
He was a badass. He was awesome.
Yeah.
Great show to watch, guys. Great show.
They modeled it after me.
I don't have a question, but I just have, I've always heard the expression of, if you don't worry about your kids being Jewish, worry about your grandkids being Jewish. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because, like, I don't know, like, my kids are Jewish and they identify as Jewish. I just hope that as adults, they're going to identify as Jewish, marry Jewish, and want to raise Jewish children. And to me, that's part of it, like they intermarry and assimilate and all that stuff. And I mean, that's not my biggest fear, but it is a concern that I want to keep that going on. So it's not that I'm not raising my kids Jewish, it's the importance of raising my grandkids to be Jewish.
So I think you're asking an excellent question, Julie. Thank you for raising it. There's 2 different stages of life I would suggest to answer your question. The first thing is when we are raising our children, right, before there are grandkids, when we are raising our children, the sights should be on not just these kids, but what these kids are going to pass over. And if I raise my kids with the idea that they're a link in the chain, right? And that I'm passing it on to them and they're going to pass this on to their kids. Again, if it's Jewish guilt, it won't work. I don't know if you realize this, ladies and gents, but you know that, like, we're not into Jewish guilt. I know that's like really funny because stereotypically, like, there's a Jewish guilt, but it doesn't work. It's not part. I mean, you're not doing this for me, for history, for, you do this because, like, no, this is a privilege, and this is part of who I am, and part of who you are, and we want to pass this on, right? So, so when I'm raising my kids as part of them, that fits into the community aspect that we're talking about before as one of the 5. you ever like have this experience? Like, unfortunately, every once in a while, there's a newspaper headline of like some cemetery in the Ukraine that was like desecrated, and like it really bothers me. I don't know about you, but it really bothers me. And then once I ask myself questions, wait a minute, I'm actually not from the Ukraine. My ancestors aren't from the Ukraine, right? Why do I care? And the answer is because my connection to community is not just those Jews around today. It's historically, it's Jews past, present, and future. I'm part of a historic community. So the first stage is when we're raising our kids with that consciousness that we're part of something bigger. And that way they will have in their minds and in their souls and in their hearts to pass it on. The second thing is much harder. The second stage is, okay, let's say the kids are already out of our homes. They are married. Maybe they're married to Jews. Maybe modern world, they're married to non-Jews, right? That's just the reality of the world. What do we do as grandparents? Well, I'll tell you something. I know people who have made their homes kosher because they wanted their grandparents who were already deceased to be able to have eaten in that home. The grandparent-grandchild link is so strong. Kids grow up, kids rebel against parents. There's all kinds of tensions. We've all been there. We've all had teens. You know what there's discipline, there's disappointments. With grandparents, there's almost none of that, right? It's just that positive, direct love, approval. So when you're the person you love most in the world, and by the way, I'm raising my kids in Israel, and the two sets of grandparents, my parents in Montreal and my in-laws in Chicago. My kids love their grandparents. All four, they're so close to all four of their grandparents, even though they see them once a year or whatever. So grandparents can have a massive impact on their grandkids. Your role modeling, the close, loving connection, and whenever you can, you step in to fill those gaps. Maybe your kids are not as strong as Jewishly as you would have liked, because some of us come to it later in life, and the kids are already in a certain system, and so you can make Passover Seder, and you can make it wonderful. You save your money, open up another bank account, and you take your entire clan to Israel on a powerful trip. If I'm not available, I'll find you a good tour guide. Okay, that like you make it an experience. You fund your kids, your grandkids, Jewish education. Because sometimes the couples are young. One of the biggest mistakes I believe the Jewish community in America made was allowing Jewish education to become expensive. Okay, again, who knows what they were thinking? I don't really get it. Why people built these massive shuls that are used twice a year, right? And yet day schools cost $20,000 a kid. So if you're able to, as a grandparent, fund it. You can step in. Personal connections, holidays, trip to Israel, education, reading. If they love you and you love being Jewish, you can have a huge effect on your grandkids. A huge, huge effect. You won't see it tomorrow, but you will see it. You will see it. I hope that helps you a little bit, Julie, answer the question. Any other questions, comments, anything you want to share?
Doron, I must say, I'm sorry for that.
Oops. Wait, Chana, 1 second. Sorry, you're muted. Unmute yourself, Chana.
Okay, so I must say that Jack and Joyce Siegel, which are Doron's in-laws, were a very, very big influence on me for being Jewish. I give them credit because even when my son was, which some of you know, Aaron, even when my son was a baby, they would invite me over for Shabbat, holidays, everything. And Aaron was a baby in his seat, and he would sit on the table, on the dining room table. And I have learned more from them, almost as much as from you, Rabbi David. But anyway, I just really thank them. And I just also have to say, Doron, you probably don't know this, but when your wife used to come to Deerfield with the kids, I would always take Aaron's toys and give it to them, all the leftover toys, and they loved me. So they probably don't know me, but anyway, so thank you. It was a fabulous, fabulous presentation, and thank you so much for helping us all grow Jewishly. And I want to also thank the Begans, because I cannot say enough how much influence the Begans, Ellie, and the rabbi, I cannot call him David, but anyway, the rabbi had on my Jewish journey. So thank you all, and thank you, Doron. I like I said, nice to see you, and say hi to your wife. Okay?
Thank you, Chana. Appreciate it. Yes, Lori, this was recorded, and we'll make it available for anybody who wants to have a recording of it. Julie, we'll put it on the website, or just include it in the emails, or
We could do either.
maybe we'll
we
throw it
both.
in the next, put it in the next couple emails so
Yeah.
that people can.
Yeah, the next couple morning emails. Put a link to it.
Maybe Rabbi Doron, we could get you back another time. You think you could fit this into your schedule? You're muted.
I would be very glad to. It'd be my honor and pleasure anytime.
Love to have you back. It'd be great. It was great to hear your wisdom, and I think that I just think that the combination of your research and your knowledge, and also your personal experiences, and your openness and willingness to just share with us your own life and your own experiences is amazing. And I think that everything you said is literally like just take it to the bank, because it's I could not agree more with every single thing you said. Is 100%. And I think that if we all take to heart even just a little bit of what we learned today, I think we'll be able to make a big difference on not just on our children, but generations to come, which is really what it's all about. So, okay, I'm going to say goodbye to everybody. Have a wonderful day. Make sure to participate in other classes and things going on this week. And everyone be safe, be healthy, get the vaccine when you can. And we'll see you all soon. We'll schedule something soon.
Thank
We'll
you so
follow up
much.
class. Yeah. Okay. Have a great
Thanks so
day,
much.
everybody. Be well.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Doron, you want to stay on for a
Thank
second?
you, Rabbi. Oh, I think he's gone.
Yeah, he's gone. Okay. Thanks, guys.